Okay, about ready to begin. I have a lot of raised hands already. I will get to all of you shortly. Begin with, we just need to read a short note here. This meeting of the Glens Falls Planning Board is a virtual meeting as authorized by New York Executive Order 202.1. The public is participating via Zoom. The meeting has been advertised on the city's website, notice of which has been posted. The live Zoom meeting is being recorded and will be, and it is also being live streamed on YouTube of the city's YouTube channel. Will also be made available shortly after ending on the City of Glens Falls YouTube page, which is available at www.youtube.com and searching for the City of Glens Falls. If you wish to participate by making a statement or asking a question, please wait until the moderator opens the meeting for public comments. You should raise your hand until you receive a text from me stating that you will be called upon in the order in which you have signaled the meeting administrator. I will say that we have a number of people who do want to speak tonight, so we are going to try to limit this to 3 minutes per person. And I will give everyone a notice of about 30 seconds before that 3 minutes is over. And with that, let's begin the meeting with Mr. Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Pape. Welcome to the April 6th, 2021 meeting of the Glens Falls Planning Board. We will begin this evening's meeting with the approval of the minutes from the March 2nd, 2021 Planning Board meeting. Does anyone here make a motion to that effect?
Did anybody have any comments?
Make the motion, someone.
Dan, did anybody have any comments?
No, we'll make the motion, then we'll have comments, and then we'll vote.
Motion to approve?
Yep.
I would make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for March 2nd, 2021 as submitted.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion, any questions, comments? There being none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passed. All right, the first item under new business. Dean Roselle. Pardon me?
Yes.
Dean Roselle and Irina Kostrogina, hope I got that right.
Correct.
Owners of tax map number 302.16-13-18, commonly known as 83 Sanford Street, are seeking a curb cut to widen the apron and to widen the first 20 feet of the driveway by 10 feet at this location. Pursuant to city zoning, chapter 220, section 220-48A, part 2, this application requires an advisory opinion by the planning board to the common council. Is there anyone here representing this application?
Yes, I am Dean Roselle.
And me, Irina Kostrogina.
Very good. Do you have anything you wish to discuss regarding your application?
Not really. It's 10 feet wide and 20 feet deep. The addition to the driveway that we are seeking. The road has no real, it's narrow. And if you park, when we purchased the house, we're new homeowners here. And when we purchased the house, and when we were looking at it, a car come by and knocked my mirror off. But that said, we are parking front to back. And with our shifts, we have to jockey cars around at night. So we just like to be able to park side by side.
Very good. Are there any members of the public that care to comment on this application? not, we'll begin with our architectural consultant, Mr. Brown. Any comments? You're muted, Mr. Brown. You're muted. Mr. Brown, you're muted. You have to hit, there's a little icon in the lower left corner of your screen. It says mute. It's a little speaker, a microphone.
Okay, sorry.
You're fine. All right, we can hear you now. So any comments regarding this?
And it's an element, bad connection here.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. I'm recommending a positive advisory opinion,
very good.
provided they construct the apron and parking to meet code.
Thank you. The city engineer had no comments that I'm aware of. We'll begin with Mr. Hall.
So I don't have any problems. I mean, it looks like all you're proposing to do is one car space, 10 feet by 20 feet. I understand the reason for doing it. That part of Sanford is pretty congested and the traffic tends to run through there. It's kind of the easiest cut through. I myself use it daily. So I understand what you're asking for there and I don't have a problem with it. Again, as Mr. Brown said, I think that the materials you're planning to pave this new section.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, and then the sidewalk, we typically ask that from the sidewalk to the street be concrete so that the plows don't rip it up. Tends to wear a little better. So other than that, no, I'm good with it. I think it's perfectly acceptable.
Thank
Thank
you.
Mr. Green,
I agree with Ethan.
very good. Ms. Murray? Are you there? Just give me, you're muted. Okay, I got your thumbs up. Ms. Colligan,
I have no questions or comments.
very good, thank you. Mr. Accardi, I don't see you there. Are you there?
Peter Riccardi.
Okay. Ms. Andrews? Is Kim Andrews here? I hope she was on the distribution list for the invitation, wasn't she, Mr. Pape?
Yes, she was.
Thank you. Okay. That said, we need,
You're just looking for an advisory opinion, Dan?
yes, thank you.
I'd make a motion, Glens Falls Planning Board hereby submits the following advisory opinion to the Common Council, that the council should look with favor on the application of Dean Roselle and Irina Kostrogina for a curb cut at 83 Sanford Street as presented at the meeting of 6 April 2021. The only condition being that the apron from the sidewalk to the street be concrete and the area be paved to match the rest of the driveway.
Second.
Very good, thank you. Second by Mr. Green. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So be it. Now, you know how this works, Mr. Roselle, Ms. Costrogina. We submit this to the Common Council and they will actually act on it. So I think they will send you, you don't have to appear, I don't believe. Is that correct, Megan?
They don't have to appear now.
And the Common Council will just, you'll send them the approval, if you will.
I'll send them the resolution.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You,
Thank you.
Mr. Bruno, if I can interject, Kim Anders is trying to log in. She needs a code or something. She can't log in.
Okay,
I don't, if Pete can send her another one or,
yeah, thank you. Could you, I don't have her number in front of me. Mr. Pape, could you send her a link by any chance?
And Dan, Rachel says she's working on her audio problem. She may have to log out and log back in.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, it looks like Chris is working on her audio problem.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Rachel. Oh, there she is.
Chris, get a bigger hammer.
Peter, I just sent you Kim's email address again. She sent out a mass email, so hopefully you get it.
Thank you. Apologize for the delay, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. No problem. Yeah, whatever you need, no problem. All right, take care. Yep, bye.
There's Kim. Welcome. Now that you're here, I will introduce the newest member of the Planning Board, Kim Andrews. Welcome aboard. Okay, you didn't miss much.
I was watching you on Zoom, so I didn't lose a lot, or on YouTube, so,
Oh, okay. Well, good to have you.
yeah,
All
thanks.
right, moving along. The next item is sign review. Henry Norton, contract lessee of Gary Sisti,
Yeah.
owner of tax map number 302.16-4-27, commonly known as 24 Sanford Street, is seeking approval to cover 100% of the window at his business with a window wrap sign at this location. Pursuant to City Code, Chapter 180, Section 180-4E, this application requires sign review board approval. Is there anyone here representing this application?
Henry Norton.
Good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Norton. Anything you'd care to discuss relative to your application?
Honestly, I'm just looking to have the window wrapped. I think the old law is like a 20% is the most you can have on your windows. The reason for the window wrap is it's going to keep the heat out. And not only that, putting signs up and whatnot are a lot harder to get approved. And obviously interfere with a lot more. I'm right across from the school. So it's literally a 5-foot by 8-foot window. That'll just be a window wrap with the business name on it. That's transparent from the inside. It's almost again like a tint, but it's just the business name and details of the business on it.
Very good, thank you. Are there any members of the public that care to comment on this application? Seeing none, we'll move to our architectural consultant, Mr. Brown.
I have no comments.
Very good, thank you. The city engineer did not submit any comments relative to this application, so we'll begin with planning board. Ms. Andrews, any comments?
No comments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Accardi, are you there? Okay. Ms. Culligan.
I have no questions or concerns about it. Does he need to have a waiver for that? Do we have to give him some kind of waiver to allow the covering?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. No more comments.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Murray,
No, I have no comments.
Mr. Green,
I have none either.
very good, and Mr. Hall.
No, I understand the reason for wanting it. That part of the building does kind of face due west. There's not a lot of trees in front of it, so I imagine it gets a lot of sun coming in there. Plus, it's right on the sidewalk, and it doesn't, people walking back and forth there, and the kids and stuff. It's not something you really want people kind of staring inside the window. So I agree with it. I'm in favor of it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Accardi, I see you now. Did you have any comments? Maybe you can't hear me. Mr. Fitzgerald,
No comments on the design or anything other than from a legal side, just pointing out that it's in front of this board for a sign variance because it constitutes a sign. So when the applicant mentioned he'd need approval for a sign, this is why he's here, because it's a non-conforming sign.
so he's looking for us to grant a variance to the sign ordinance.
Correct, because if it was conforming, the code office would be able to just
Yeah.
issue the permit.
Sure. Very good, thank you. There's no speaker required for this. So can we have a motion to grant the variance for this sign?
So I would make a motion, the Glens Falls Planning Board hereby approve the sign permit for, let me get the number right, Henry Norton. He is the contract lessee of Gary Sisti, owner of 24 Sanford Street, for the sign to cover 100% of the window at the business with a sign wrap. The sign will be the screen type that's visible from the inside to the outside, but not from the outside to the inside.
Thank you very much.
Can I say one thing there?
Sure,
It's not the planning board, it's actually the sign review board.
right,
Okay, then I will amend my motion to be the sign review board.
very good. Thank you. A second on that?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, any questions? Hearing none, I'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? So be it, carries. Thank you, Mr. Norton.
Thank you guys for your time.
Okay. The next item is site plan review 21-0010, 70 Warren Street, LLC, owner of tax map numbers 303.17-18-18 and 303.17-18-19, commonly known as 74 Warren Street and 80 Warren Street respectively, seeking approval to improve the existing parking lot between the buildings by repaving, landscaping, and curb work at this location. Pursuant to City Code Chapter 220, Section 220-17B, this application requires planning board review and approval. Is there anyone here representing this application?
I am Hoffman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hoffman. Anything you care to discuss, add, or whatever to your application?
Well, just maybe to the lay of over there, we've purchased two buildings on Orange Street, about a quarter of a mile from the traffic circle. And what we're looking to do is last year we rehabbed 74 Warren, and what our desire is to do now is to rehab 80 Warren. And in between both buildings is a joint parking lot. And it's just a wide open parking lot now. And what we want to do is to define it, curb it, landscape it, and put extra lighting in the parking lot. And that's why we're here this evening.
Very good. Thank you. Are there any members of the public that care to comment on this application? I see Ms. Colagero.
On behalf of the Glens Falls IDA, we've been working with Mr. Hoffman on a number of projects on Warren Street, including 70 Warren Street. And this is consistent with those efforts and will help to support and complement the buildings that the city's invested in through those efforts. So we support this.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, I'll proceed to our architectural consultant, Mr. Brown. Not sure he's still there. I'll read Mr. Brown's comment submitted to me. He says the miniature site plan submitted does not show existing or proposed surface drainage slopes. One concern is surface drainage slopes and runoff into the street or onto adjacent properties. If there are poor or improper drainage conditions existing, removal of some or the entire existing pavement and or adding subgrade drainage components could help improve or correct those conditions. Other concerns are A, is there any requirement for handicap parking and where would that occur? And B, is that a new raised curb island containing the new trees and light poles? Question mark. Those items may be vulnerable to snow plowing given the island's narrow width. So those are comments from our architectural consultant. Mr. Hoffman, did you want to respond to those? Or?
Yes. Right now, the parking lot is one massive piece of blacktop, and there are no drainage issue. We're not reshaping or redirecting any water whatsoever from where it's currently going. There's a gutter out on the street, and I know some of it flows to, but we aren't changing we're making more impervious surfaces than that are currently there. The landscaping in the middle will act as an area for lighting, for to make it more attractive and green. As far as snow removal, we do our own snow removal. We use small machines to get in and out, and we're used to this with lots very similar to it across the road. Warren Street Square, for one, it's a very similar lot, and I can't remember. Was there another item there, Mr. Bruno?
The handicap parking is a requirement for.
We would. I don't know that Van Dusen and Steve's put. I don't have the plan I don't know whether they actually put any in there, but we would do
No,
it.
there are none indicated on the plan that I'm looking at.
We would comply to code, whatever the code was for size lot, certainly in that size buildings, and
Sure.
or to whatever the pleasure of the board would be. We would absolutely always compliant to that. So
Sure.
if it's not on there, it's my apology. Should be.
That's fine. Okay, so the city engineer had no comment that I'm aware of. So we'll begin with comments from the planning board. I'll start with Mr. Hall.
So yeah, Peter, I think that it's, there is a formula for figuring that out. It's, one handicap space, I think, for every 25 spaces, something like that. There is a formula that's in the code for that. But I think you've got plenty of space to get that to work. I had a similar concern about the curb island, but you know, that's an internal thing for you guys to figure out. And obviously it works across the street at the other place there on Warren Street. I'm assuming what you're proposing is something very similar to what you've got right across the street at Warren Square.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We are. It just gives an ability. Right now, it's like the wild, wild west there. The parking lot is wide open, and I felt we have to delineate where the parking is with striping and curbing. And we've done it really all over our city properties by raising vegetation. People aren't driving through the vegetation. It allows us to get some trees and flowers and lawn in there. And I think just makes it a very distinguished project at the end. But
sure. And out back, I know the Google Earth, and I've driven through the parking lot so many times. It's that's where I park when I go to hockey. So keep that in mind. When I go to hockey, I need a parking space. The garage that's back there, is that gone now?
It's going.
It's going. It's still there now, though. With part of your.
It's falling in, so it's
yeah.
It'll be removed as part of the site work.
Okay. All right. I knew it was. I knew it was there the last time I parked back there. So I wondered if that had been taken down yet or not. And I know that when you were in front of us for the other project, you had talked about that, I believe, as well. So other than that, yeah, I don't have any issues. I mean, I think that it's going to be a good use of the property, and certainly we're adding some green space in there. So I'm good with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Green.
I have no problem with the project, but on the site plan, I would like to see some more detailed dimensions, the width of the aisles, the width of the, the parking spaces. This is all in the code. It's supposed to be on the site plan. So I definitely would like to see that. Other than that, I have no problem with the project.
Okay, very good. Ms. Murray.
Nope, I agree with Ron and Ethan. I think it's going to look nice with having some green space there. I think it'll be a nice addition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Colligan.
No questions or comments. I agree with Ron and Ethan as well.
Thank you very much. Mr. Accardi. Any comment?
No comment.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews.
No comments.
Yeah, am I to recall that this is a mixed use or is it straight residential?
Well, in 74 Warren, the building we brought before you last year, the one to the west, has got one apartment in it. And the new location will be a restaurant. And that will be the old Millings Made Easy building, 80 Warren.
Right. Okay. So I think you're right that the handicap one will be required and the green space will be a nice complement to that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. The only, one of the only comments I have in addition to Mr. Green, I can't tell from here, whoever did this, is there the diagonal parking, is there room to maneuver there? You can't tell from this plan. It looks a little narrow with respect to the planter in the middle, but
we're keeping the plant fairly petite, Bruno. I mean, it allows us, it's about a 3-foot planter going down the center, and it just, all the things brings the green space in. It's just enough. but Van Duzen and Steves did the plan, and their engineers came out and marked and measured and works very nicely. So, my belief is, yes, it does. And from my own methodology of pulling into one of those spots and backing into the to the drive-through lane and then go around works actually very. So I believe Van Duzen and Steves did address.
Okay, because there are prescribed dimensions with respect to all various parking schemes and types of parking, diagonal, straight in and all that. But again, I don't see it on here, but if, well, hopefully they've done that and they can put those dimensions on this drawing, but
it's actually always worked that way in the past when Mailing's Made Easy and the Red Cross owned the other building. They all did that without lines and curbs or any directions or so it's the same. It's almost the same exact use other than that little delineating curb, which I think will help with any problems. I think by angle car as well, Mr. Bruno, we keep the spot shorter as opposed to T-boning into the building, going square, you'd need a larger turning radius by tilting the cars in those angle spots. It actually works very, very nicely.
Right, I'm aware of all that, but again, there are in the parking lot design, traffic design, there are prescribed distances from, say, the end of the diagonal parking lot to any obstruction, et cetera. So I just want to make sure that they've addressed that, because otherwise you're going to have problems, and then they're going to come back and say to the planning board, why did you approve something that doesn't work? So as long as you're aware of it, they're aware of it, and make sure that it works.
We are, and I will be committed before we do anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Other than that, Mr. Fitzgerald, our legal counsel, did you have any comments, anything?
No, not since Mr. Hoffman clarified they're in common ownership. My only question was relevant if the two parcels were not owned by the same owner.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Ed, would those have to be tied together by deed? I know we've required that in the past if it's common to both things. I'm not sure how Peter has it set up with the LLCs, but.
Right. So if they become in separate ownership, I would suggest that he do some kind of reciprocal easement for the parking because, or long-term lease, however he wants to do it, just because you'd essentially be creating a situation where you have to go over one parcel to get to the other and vice versa.
Right.
If they're both owned together right now, it's not necessarily an immediate concern, but something to keep in mind for the future if one of them were carved off without the other.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Peter, how do you intend to handle that?
Well, I'm a young man, Mr. Hall. I'm never going to retire. But I think right now, or prior to me buying the second building, it's always been separate and standalone. I that it would be a legal issue or a redesign issue if I sold one building without the other. And I truly envision the way this thing works. They really work together. And if I truly sold, sell them as a pair. But I guess you can never say never. But if it did, I think then it becomes a legal engineering planning board issue where you'd go back and say, we want to change this. It's because of this reason. But I think in the foreseeable future, they'll remain in my name.
Okay,
Ed, are you good? Ed, are you good with that?
I have no concern with that since
Okay.
he owns them both as of right now.
Okay.
seeker required.
My inclination on the seeker is that it's a reuse of existing properties. Obviously, the board can take a different opinion, but and if you classify it as a reuse of a commercial property, then you would not have to conduct the seeker review.
I agree with that. Very good. That said, we'll entertain a motion. Let's see.
Should we consider tabling it until the site, the plans are more specific as people have asked, or just kind of assume he'll take care of it?
No, we make that a condition of approval.
Okay.
Thank you. That said, I'll make a motion. The planning board, Glens Falls Planning Board, acting as a board of site plan review, hereby grants site plan approval for the project identified as 70 Warren Street LLC, located at 74 and 80 Warren Street, as presented at the meeting of 6 April 2021, subject to the following condition: that the dimensions be added to the drawing, the dimensions of the parking spaces, the distance between them, etc. Were there any other?
The handicap spaces.
And the addition of indication of handicap spaces. I think that was it. Second, Mr. Hall. Any comments, questions? There being none, I'll call a question. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, the next item is architectural review 21-011, 70 Warren Street LLC, owner of tax map number 303.17.18, commonly known as 80 Warren Street, seeking approval to renovate the exterior of the building at this location. Pursuant to City Code, Chapter 220, Section 220-17D, this application requires planning board review and approval. And we have Mr. Hoffman representing this again, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any comments prior to our proceeding with a review?
Yeah, the building, as I mentioned before, a mile from the roundabout. It was mailings made easy for about the last 15 years. The building, we were originally going to raise the building because we felt the appearance of it was not to our standard, to what the kind of property we have. We went inside, we found the building is extremely, and decided to move forward with the attempt to renovate, to turn it into something more attractive than currently sits there. Really, there's been no changes made to the building since probably the mid. We use some architectural elements, some stuff we've done before, and a restaurant who lease with us for the front space. We have a small vacant space in back that'll need to be filled. But we want to tear the existing front off the building. There's nothing of any architectural significance whatsoever on the building. And we just don't think it fits the way it looks. It does not fit the Warren Street corridor that we've invested fairly heavily in. But we presented a plan to the board and hope it meets with your.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public that care to comment on this application?
It's next, and then Chris Pat.
You're in queue, so only someone raises their hands or wants to comment, let me know.
Okay,
Judy? Judy, you want to go ahead and unmute?
Similar to what I said before, the City of Glens Falls Industrial Development Authority invested heavily in these same properties along Warren Street, including right nearby at 70 Warren Street, where we have a project that's ongoing. And so we support this. We think it aligns with the work that we're doing at 70 Warren and the work that we've done in the past. And we support Mr. Hoffman's proposal.
very good. Thank you. Anyone else?
See no other hands up right now.
Thank you. We'll proceed. Our architectural consultant, Mr. Brown, are you there? Did you come back? Okay. Must have lost him. I'll read his comment. This is regarding architectural review 21-0011. The overall design of the small additions appear to be consistent with the character of the building and surrounding neighborhood. Not shown but needed. A, along the Warren Street patio front, a setback dimension from the city sidewalk. B, will the building interior have direct access to the new Warren Street patio? C, the applicant should describe how the large canopy along Warren Street will be lighted. D, at new roof, roof drainage gutters and roof snow retainers should be provided to protect workers and pedestrians. And E, will a floor drain be provided in the new exterior basement stair? Mr. Hoffman, would you care to respond?
I couldn't write them as fast as you said them.
That's, I can read them off if.
Mr. Brown, I can do them one by one.
Sure.
The setback from the city, we did the building right next door to it. We did the same kind of a treatment where we brought curbing out to the edge of the city. We had it located by surveyor and before it went in and established the curbing. And we would do the same here. We would certainly not build on the city property. We would stay off property and build it right to where we're allowed. And so the right now they've got concrete and blacktop all the way right up tight against the building. So it's a huge area in between. The sidewalk is clearly, there's two pads, two 8-foot pads side by side going all the way up and down Warren Street. So it's pretty easy to determine where that is, but that would certainly be done by Van Dusen and Steves.
Thank you. Do you want me to read the next one?
Yes, please.
Sure. It says, will the building interior have direct access to the new Warren Street patio?
Yes, we haven't, the patio would be a 3-season deck out there. And we have an overhead door that open behind the door to the interior is the bar and dining tables. So that door will open up, that overhead door will open, and it'll walk on the same plane as the existing building. So it'll be built with no steps or anything. It'll just come right out of that door and onto the patio. And there'll be an entrance down by the parking lot, which is on your plan left side, that they'd be able to walk in from that side and access the patio.
Very good. The next question was, the applicant should describe how the large canopy along Warren Street will be lighted.
It'll have no exterior, no external lighting. It'll be underneath the canopy with like LED lighting up in the rafters, so it gave enough lighting to the deck, but there'll be nothing like exterior of the canopy footprint. So it'll be up interior, and it'll be subtle lighting that
So it's pretty much hidden recessed lighting, if you will.
Yes, sir. There'll be rafters coming down, iron rafters that'll come down to that front piece going across as a piece of iron, and then the iron rafters go back into the building, and there'll be lighting tucked up in underneath there to light that.
Thank you. The next one was, at the new roof eaves, roof drainage gutters and roof snow retainers should be provided to protect workers and pedestrians.
Agreed. We would use gutters across the front to capture the water. What we're doing is we're keeping the roofing a little bit back, and the vegetation, again, we're going to sneak some vegetation in front of the iron between the brick columns. We're sneaking in a little vegetation there to accent it. So a gutter, I think, would be a good idea to go across to catch the water, and some slide stops, ice stops on the galvanized roof. It's very similar look to what we did last year on the building next to it on 74 Warren, and it worked very nicely there. So we're hoping to carry kind of the same theme.
Very good, thank you. The last one is, will a floor drain be provided in the new exterior basement stair?
Those are existing stairs.
Yes, they're existing stairs, and they're open right now to the elements. Because we need a second means of ingress and egress to utilize the basement, we've really got to keep the stairs. So what we're doing is putting an awning over the top. You can see it on the plan of the front elevation. It cuts out and protect a lot of stuff from going down. The handrails are broken, but will be replaced going down into the stairs. But it'll be used. It'll be we're not able to enclose them because they're like I said, existing, and so we use that. We put that awning over to protect them.
Okay, so currently there are no issues with water collecting in there, etc.
There's and currently it's wide open, Mr. Bruno.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bear with me. City engineer, I had no comments from him. So we will begin with the planning board. I will begin with Ms. Andrews. Any comments?
No comments.
Thank you. Mr. Accardi? Any comments?
No comment.
Thank you very much. Ms. Colligan?
No comment.
Thank you. Ms. Murray?
I think this is going to be a great addition to Warren Street. I really like the plan. I think that it looks fantastic, and I'm looking forward to it. I have no concerns about it.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Green?
I'd just like to ask what the columns are gonna be on the front of the building. Are they gonna look like the culvert pipe in the building next door, or are they just gonna be steel columns?
We're going to use I-beams. We're going to use steel I-beams on this one. We wanted to utilize something a little different. So we'll use bluestone cap, brick columns, bluestone cap, and then a wrought iron beam, just like it got going across the top. And it'll look pretty much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Hall.
Peter, I hate to be the guy who's going to rain on your parade today.
Please.
Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong. GC1 has a 20-foot front yard setback, correct?
It does.
The existing building is 15 feet, 5 inches from the property line in the front, according to Van Dusen and Steve's survey that we're looking at from the past project. So if you expand this building out to the sidewalk, doesn't that require a zoning variance? I mean, that roof that's not a temporary structure. That's a permanent structure. And in the GC1 zone, a 15-foot setback is a requirement. Peter, I think what you're proposing here, it looks great. I just want to make sure we're not approving something that you can't build.
I can't agree more. If it's something that should go before a zoning, take it before a zoning.
Yeah. Just looking at that was the first thing that I looked at was the 20-foot front yard setback. And I mean, I think it's a great idea. Certainly, don't get me wrong. I think that the drawings that you provided to us here look great. I really like the new facade in picking the front of that building up and making it much taller in the front than what it is. I mean, it's basically a flat roofed building. And my assumption is a lot of the mechanical equipment and stuff is going up on that roof. So this new facade will, of course, hide all of that.
To that, Mr. Hall, we're doing that, and I didn't mention, but if you look at the second page of the plan, we're running an iron fence along the top to get a little more elevation and to cover the air conditioner that'll be up on the roof and to so on. So we're running a iron. We got iron we're actually using across the top to give it the same feel. But yeah, I didn't note that.
Yeah, my assumption is if you're talking restaurant, there's going to be hoods and exhaust fans and all kinds of crap that's going to wind up being up there as well. So, I think that's I like the idea of that equipment screen, and I think that'll do a good job to do that. But my biggest question, I guess, was that front facade and coming out to the front like that in the GC1 zone. So I think that's something, Dan, that we got to take a pretty serious look at.
Yeah, there's two ways to approach it. You can I think you could do a conditional approval conditioned on them obtaining that variance, or you could table it if the applicant agrees and wait until that variance is obtained.
I honestly, my thought would be, rather than put Peter through the ringer with it, I think it would be easier for him to obtain the variance first. Again, I don't think that this is a big deal, but that's really a call for the zoning board, not really for us. So, I mean, I think I would be more in favor of tabling it and waiting until he gets that zoning board stuff taken care of. I don't know how everybody else feels.
If I could just, we would like to start as soon as possible for this to give person the restaurant by sometime in the summer. Mm-hmm. And if at all possible to expedite it, if there's nothing besides that question that I could take before a zoning and with a conditional approval, be able to, because of timing. And we've owned this building for a couple of months, and we jump on them right away and rehab them and put them back in service. And this building is nothing different. And whatever the board's pleasure would be, I certainly respect. But anything we could do to, if that was the only question, if I could get that through zoning, and then, bring it to zoning. And as long as they don't have any issue with it, be able to start construction as opposed to a 3-month delay.
So, Mr. Hall, you're in favor of tabling it?
I would be, I understand Peter's issue with it. I would hate to, have them make a, not allow them to build right up to the property line. And then everything that we would have given a conditional approval upon would have to be modified, and then he's back here anyway. So that's my personal feeling.
Mr. Green? You're muted.
I agree with Mr. Hall.
Ms. Murray?
I'm okay with a conditional approval.
Ms. Colligan?
I'm okay with a conditional approval as well.
Mr. Accardi? Mr. Accardi? Peter,
You still there?
are you in favor of tabling or conditional approval? Ms. Andrews, how do you feel?
I think conditional approval will be fine.
I approve it.
Conditional?
Send to the zoning board.
I didn't understand you. Are you okay with a conditional approval pending successful granting of a variance? All right, I'm okay with conditional approval. So I think we'll go that route. Our attorney had no other comments, and it's a reuse of a commercial structure with a permitted use, so no secret review is required. That said, I'll make a motion to Glens Falls Planning Board, acting as the Board of Architectural Review, hereby grants conditional architectural approval for the project identified as 70 Warren Street LLC, located at 80 Warren Street. This is subject to the applicant obtaining variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals to allow the construction of the building extension facing Warren Street. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Any other discussion? Any comments? There being none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Mr. Hall is opposed. The resolution passes. Motion passes. Okay, so Mr. Hoffman, you're aware of the requirement set forth?
Yes, sir, and I thank the board. Mr. Bruno, there was one other question that I been told to broach with the planning board was the site plan approval that we had back in 2018 for the old post office property across the road to enable us to get a curb cut. And at the time, the board had said I needed to get a curb cut approval from the city of Glens Falls. And I just wanted to mention it at the meeting here and to see if there was any, for any reason that we should bring it up at this meeting, or is there any opportunity here on that?
We need a formal application for that, for curb cut.
Okay.
And little description, obviously, of what is proposed before we can act on it.
Fine. That's great. Then we will maybe talk to Chris and see what we have to do to get that curb cut portion of the site plan in. But I thank the board for their time and for everything you do for the city of Glens Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
Good evening.
Okay, the next item is site plan review 21-0006. Chris Patton, contract lessee of 333 Glen Associates LLC, owner of tax map number 302.20-23-4, commonly known as 333 Glen Street, is seeking approval for the construction of a residential apartment building at this location. Pursuant to City Code, Chapter 220, Section 220-17B, this application requires planning board review and approval. Is there anyone here representing this application?
Hi, Dan. This is John Lapper.
Hi, John.
I'll get started with some general comments, if that's okay, and then I'll turn it over to Chris to describe the details that he supplied to the board with this submittal.
Sure.
So in general, I just want to focus on the fact that we're all aware that the Common Council has talked about possibly taking this property under eminent domain. And obviously, that's one of the powers that the legislative body has, and they may decide to do that. They may have the votes to do that. They may not decide to do that. So in terms of these applications pending before the planning board, I just request that this move forward, separate and apart from what the Common Council might do, because we don't know what they might do, and they certainly haven't done anything formal yet. Second point is just that, obviously this has become controversial and political, if you will, because it's a green space. But I read some comments, or maybe in one of the newspaper articles, where it was described as public open space, and it's not that. It's private property that, after the insurance company building was knocked down, has been maintained as green space, but it's private green space. And just in terms of the discussion for the last 35 years that I've lived here, everyone's been talking about bringing downtown Glens Falls back to its past grandeur. And obviously, a lot of positive things have happened, certainly in the last few years, restaurants and businesses. And what's always been discussed is that we need more residents downtown to populate those businesses. So, Chris has done a number of significant projects in the city, one right across the street from here, and having nice apartments and having more residents to shop and to populate the city is certainly a goal of economic development. And all he did was see that there was a vacant piece of property that was available in the GC1 zone. And he's proposing a very expensive, fancy building, if you will, to match the historic architecture of the insurance company building that was on the site. And it's just somewhat surprising that it's become such a lightning rod only because it's got grass and trees. But that said, we're here to address issues that planning board members raise, to go through the site plan, to go through the architecture. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chris to describe in some detail what his most recent submission shows.
Thank you, John. Yeah, my most recent submission really just reflects on all the experience that I've had with the board here in the last few meetings. You know, I've been listening to the church members in relationship to the sun being blocked in their windows. So this latest submission is, you know, offered quite a clearance from the construction of my building to the side of the church, specifically just to address, you know, that request. You know, we could place this building, you know, with it conforms with the setbacks in GC1 in multiple locations, but you know, this specific location was picked just to, you know, to please the church members. The size of the building, we had to bring that down. I realized that it's going to be a challenge to even get through planning, let alone zoning. So we've brought this building down to meet the GC1 height requirement. Listen to Mr. Brown's comments regarding the historic preservation and 3 Squares Historic District. Part of the reason why I named the building Parkview Square, you know, which is obviously up for discussion, but the building, it really, I was trying to match the existing building there. And of course, anybody could tear apart a drawing, you know, be it 3D or 2D. I mean, it's really just a rendering, you know. You know, I wanted to show the board that I'm proposing solid stone on the lower level. I know we have board members that are with us today that really like brick. So I proposed brick on a couple levels there and really tried to match the old building that was once there. In regards to landscaping and green space, you know, we've conformed to all the GC1 requirements in regards to those. Same with lighting. You know, we have adequate lighting in our plans that we've submitted. Parking, we meet all the GC1 requirements as far as parking spaces per unit. A lot of people questioned as to why I wasn't able to, or why I didn't commercial space on the first floor, but it came down to parking. You know, parking for commercial spaces requires a lot more area than that of residential. Being that GC1 allows residential units on the first level, we had to change the building and, you know, change the design just to conform to make the project even remotely profitable, essentially. You know, that's it for me.
Thank you. All right. As Mr. Pape stated earlier, we will have public comments. They'll be limited to 3 minutes each. Mr. Pape will give you an indication when you have 30 seconds left. So that said, I'll open it up to any public comments, and Mr. Pape will lead us through that. He'll control who speaks what sequence. Thank you.
The first speaker we have tonight is Judy Calogero.
Thank you, Peter. I'm Judy Calogero. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this project again. I speak on behalf of a group of concerned citizens who strongly oppose the proposed development. Our complete comments have been presented in writing to the members and for the record. Our opposition to the project is due to its location, the negative impact the structure will have on nearby historic buildings, and our desire for green space. But our main concerns are the limits of the site and the constraints and restrictions it presents for development. The site, as mentioned, is within GC1, which includes a density requirement, which has not been mentioned, that limits the number of dwelling units. The code says no multiple family dwellings shall be erected, altered, or used, which do not provide a lot area of at least 2,500 square feet for each dwelling unit. Given the lot area of 23,828 square feet, according to the Glens Falls City Code, the total number of permittable dwelling units on this site is 9.5 units. To put it another way, to permit the development of 21 dwelling units as proposed, the square footage of the lot area would need to be at least 52,500 square feet, or more than double its current size. According to the code, the purpose and intent of GC1 is to permit multifamily housing at reasonable densities and on larger lots. As proposed, the project fails to meet the purpose and intent of GC1, and it far exceeds the permittable number of dwelling units. The site is within the historic district, 3 Squares Historic District as it is known, and next to the most significant historic structures within that district. The National Trust approved strategy for the district calls for the continued preservation of these properties and to avoid development activities that distract from their visual appeal. As presented, the design would create a wall and an awkward alley type effect that distracts from the Church of the Messiah, which is one of the finest examples of the Gothic revival style of architecture in our city. The proposed apartment building would significantly and negatively impact the view of the church from several angles, including from the Glen Street corridor. Should this planning board agree to permit the project to proceed at 9 units, we ask you to consider the following. We ask that the planning board require the applicant
Judy, I
to
just want to let you know you have 30 seconds. I'm sorry.
a streetscape elevation. We ask you to require the applicant to have a shadow study. We ask for a full environmental impact statement, and in particular to consider the columbarium at the church. We ask you to bring on a historic preservation expert, and in particular our concern for the Tiffany windows at the church. And we ask that the planning board require the applicant to identify an alternative location for vehicular access to avoid the flow of traffic along Bay Street and Maple. Thank you for your comments or for your time.
Thank you.
The second speaker we have online tonight is Linda Clark.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Linda Clark. I have attended the Church of Messiah since 1965. My late father, the Reverend Robert E. Clark, was priest of Messiah from 1978 to 1993. For the details of this 3-minute presentation, please read my email letter. I am adamantly opposed to the proposed building project located on the Continental Park property. The Church of Messiah is a historic building, well over 150 years old. There is also a columbarium inside where many people are buried, including my father. This makes this building a grave site and subject to the protection of such places. One of my biggest concerns is the high risk of damaging this structure during the intense proposed construction on the site next to it. At what price are we willing to put this building and grave site in peril? Who will be liable if the building is damaged? Is the possible loss or damage to this historic treasure worth the risk? I think not. When the insurance company building was demolished, the city and Continental Insurance made an agreement to develop a park on this site. According to the Post-Star article dated October 26, 1976, there was a shared financial agreement to develop the site. Quote, community development funds are used to finance the city part of the project, close quote. There are many other articles that convey this intent, which I cited in my letter. If the insurance company does not want to continue with this obligation, the property should be sold to the city of Glens Falls, so this will forever continue to be a park. Also, I would like to address the need for green space. I'm not an urban engineer, but it's not too difficult to understand the importance of it. My letter details the World Health Organization, WHO minimum and maximum standard dedicated to green space. After inquiring about the size of the Glens Falls City Park, I was informed that 1.5 acres is owned by Crandall Trust, and the city only owns 0.92 acres. The city can only claim the owned USG space provided by the municipality. Glens Falls is currently grossly falling short of the minimum standard, even if the trust property is applied. One might make the argument that Crandall Park is also city green space. However, since this property borders Queensberry, a minimum of 3.9 square mile radius of population must be applied to this space, which would then take into consideration the Queensberry census numbers.
30 seconds.
City leaders during bicentennial year were visionaries who created a visual and symbolic sense of place for hometown USA. They worked with the insurance company to create Continental Park. All people come from the heart of the city understand that Glens Falls values and loves what Glens Falls values and loves. First, but not necessarily foremost, there is a love of country. The Civil War monument, visible from all roads in, reminds us of those who sacrificed for all of us to have our freedom. Second is the love of God. The connecting sidewalks created during the development of Continental Park link the Episcopal Church, the Methodist Church, and the Jewish synagogue, which are all clearly visible from the major intersections into the heart of the city. Finally, there is a love of wisdom and learning. This is evident with the beautiful Crandall Library, which is the primary structure that overlooks both parks. The symbolic and visual beauty created by these visionaries is far more enduring and valuable for future generations than the financial gain anyone could offer by developing any structure on the Continental site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I might add before, anyone that, I just want to make it known, any members of the public, et cetera, that have submitted anything in writing, that is all being entered into the record, just so that we're clear there. Thank you.
There are no other cues right now. We have a hand from Ed Ponticolani. Ed?
Ponticolani.
Thank you. Ed, you want to unmute, please?
Yes, excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Edward Ponticolani. I'm from Lake George. I'm asked to speak on behalf of the Church of the Messiah by Mother Jean Devati, the rector. If I may, I look at you all and I say you probably all remember this song by Joni Mitchell. She sang the words, "You take a paradise and you put up a parking lot." It seems to me that this is sort of what's happening here. And after listening to everyone and their comments with regard to the green space, I'd like to just address myself to two words, the words that Mr. Patton himself said in a recent interview in the Chronicle. Those words were Park Place. And he was quoted as saying that in rejecting the idea that he might move his development somewhere else, he referred to the board game Monopoly, and he said, "I have Park Place. Why would I exchange Baltic Avenue for Park Place?" With all due respect, Mr. Patton does not have Park Place. The Three Squares Historic District has Park Place. And that's a place that the residents of the cities of Glens Falls have enjoyed since the addition to the National Register of Historic Places in 1984, for over 35 years. Mr. Patton simply has the option to acquire the green space if his plans are approved by this board. Consequently, what Mr. Patton is seeking is confirmation that he can exercise that option and remove the green space from the public's pleasure. In short, what Mr. Patton wants to do is basically have you confirm his ability to eliminate the many life experiences that have found expression in popular festivals, social gatherings, community interaction, and passive recreation in the historic center of Glens Falls for over 35 years. To employ his metaphor, what Mr. Patton wants to do is remove Park Place, not from the game of Monopoly, but from the game of life, by which the citizens of Glens Falls will be disadvantaged. And make no mistake, once an advantage is lost in the game of life, it is likely never to be recovered. Now, in the absence of code provisions for the protection and the preservation of an historic district against such a loss, the board may look to Code Section 220.27 and act in a manner that is in the best interest of the general welfare of the city and its residents.
30 seconds.
Mention that the city, in acquiring the green space by eminent domain, there was a question whether or not the city would have a public purpose in doing so. I believe that there's precedent for the argument that the creation and maintenance of a historic park is a valid public purpose. I've said if you lose an advantage, you seldom get it back. If you surrender the pleasures of the green space to Mr. Patton, the citizens of Glens Falls will likely not enjoy such pleasures again. And I'll go back to the words of Joni Mitchell. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Pape?
I see no other hands. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, George Green. Go ahead. 3 minutes.
Hello, I'm George Green of 26 Coolidge Avenue. I'm a city resident, downtown building owner and business owner and an architect. Excuse me. The 2017 Downtown Revitalization Initiative Strategic Investment Plan identified both expansion of parks and housing downtown as priorities, each in their appropriate location and in the appropriate use for the city. As the city becomes more dense with more housing, more additional park space is actually more important than it's ever been. While I support Mr. Patton's desire to continue to develop apartments downtown, and I think he's done some good projects to date, many good sites are available downtown. You only have to look at an aerial image of downtown to see them. And I do not believe this is one of them. The city's proposed park use is a natural extension of City Park and continues the current informal use of the site it's been used that way for many years and has become an accepted part of downtown. In fact, the question has been brought up before, why didn't the city purchase before? And I think that's been addressed in the earlier comments, that there was an informal arrangement by which this was really to be used as public green space, and it wasn't necessary. I support the use of this space as a formal city park, as has been endorsed by the Downtown Business Improvement District and the Downtown Collaborative. While I appreciate that the applicant has attempted to update the drawings in the proposed building to input that he had previously, and has apparently tried to model the building on the third Glens Falls Insurance building. Everyone seems to think it's the first, but it's not. The architectural review requires 100% drawings, and Mr. Patton knows this is his second attempt at this, but still refers to them as just renderings and not 100% drawings. If they are in fact 100% complete documents, they're unconvincing at best.
30 seconds.
The attempted historicism without a serious attention to proportion, detail, and material is really just a parody of the historic context downtown and will detract from it rather than add to it. I can't support this project as it's proposed now, and I hope that the planning board will not either. In addition to that, I'm sure the board will deal with some of the technical issues. Not seeing the most current details, but it appears the driveway is in the middle of Maple and Bay intersection, and the facades are incomplete in terms of the level of detail required for review. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin Barkenhagen, you are next. Want to unmute, Robin?
Thank you. I'm Robin Barkenhagen, president of the Glens Falls Collaborative. I respect what Mr. Patton does with his buildings. I just think this is the wrong place for it. There is a lot of other properties in downtown that need to be redeveloped. I'll first point to South Street and the RFQ that just went out for the property that's going to be between Sandy's and New Way Lunch. And I think that would be an excellent place for Mr. Patton to build a building from scratch. And I would look forward to that project. But I just simply think that this is the wrong place for it. And that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? Mr. Bruno?
Thank you. All right, we'll proceed with our architectural consultant, Mr. Brown.
Dan, before we do that, could I just make a couple of quick comments in response to the public?
Absolutely.
So the issue that Judy raised about the density calculation, I have had discussions with Chris Vandersee about that. And what's most interesting there is that if that were imposed, that would be selective enforcement on Chris, because that wasn't imposed on the most recent Regan development project across the street from Hannaford, which is much more dense than this. And that wasn't imposed on 14 Hudson Street next to the hospital, which is also much more dense than this. And I'll just note that Judy's board, the IDA, financed both of those, and they were not required to get density variances. So I don't see how that could be held against Chris here. My only other comment is that everyone, of course, is extolling the virtues of a park, and none of us can be opposed to parks, but the park is what's across the street, City Park. And although this has been nicely maintained, it isn't and has never been a park. It's private property with a park view, because it would get to look at the park across the street. So Chris isn't trying to destroy parks. He's trying to build and develop downtown in the way it should be. And there's still plenty of park across the street. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, would you like to proceed?
Yes, I had to switch devices to get to you. And are we presently on agenda item 5, site plan review?
Yes.
Or yes.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So in the smaller picture, I'm here having reviewed the material submittals of the applicant. And in respect to the site plan review, I had several concerns. The application checklist that gets signed by the applicant and submitted, there are 5 items in it that need the board to discuss and review. I'll itemize them as quickly as I can. The matter of showing surface grading and contours are not shown on the plan. Skipping over here, the board has not received site plans, so we don't know what the site plan requirement to show building dimensions pertains to. And the business of signage, whether or not the so-called graphic illustration shows a sign over the entry door in the parking lot. The applicant should identify whether he's going to do a separate sign review or whether that's part of this action. The bigger question in looking at all of this is whether or not the application is complete and adequate for approval or incomplete and inadequate for other actions by the board, which might be tabling and so forth. So in the regard to the previous items, there are deficiencies in the application. And as far as design goes, one of my main concerns was the parking lot entry opposite the Maple Street entrance. If the parking lot entry exit for this building is opposite that intersection, it's going to face backed up traffic from the control light at the monument, and as well people coming south on Bay Street that want to turn left onto Maple have to wait for clearance to do that, and in doing so create also a backup. And on the other side of that coin, people coming out of Maple Street need to get in line for the light at the monument. So all of this creates a lot of confusion in vehicle movement. And I think the project entry exit should be on Glen Street with the entry coming from the south and the exiting going north. That would relieve a lot of congestion on Bay Street. And otherwise, there's a lot of pedestrian movement from the Bay Street side towards the city park and the library. Some people choose to use a crosswalk at Maple. Some use a crosswalk at the monument. Others just ignore everything and walk across the streets as they may wish. So that's another consideration about having the entry exit to the project on Glen Street, which has a lower pedestrian traffic. The other item is a setback clarification. In looking at the setback table dimensions, it raises a question, does the building have 2 fronts or 3 fronts? And if it is 3 fronts, then all of them would need the 20-foot setback. Whereas right now there's a reference to the right side back setback as being 15 feet. So thus my question, are there 2 fronts or 3 fronts to this building site? And thus the setback dimensions are affected. I also recommend if the project were to proceed, that in the proposed parking lot on the side facing the church, that it have a continuous and permanent curbing to prevent cars from over exceeding the parking lot, if you will, because the plans show new trees and light posts within 1 or 2 feet of the pavement. So vehicles and snowplows could easily damage those items if there isn't any form of curbing there. That all pertains to site plan drawing number S1. Plan S2, the city engineer has put out a memo regarding some necessary storm and water improvements at or adjacent to the site. Those should be considered in the planning of the site and design. In drawing S4, which shows the planting, there are scheduled 24-inch high yew shrubs along the front of the building facing the monument. I would recommend that rather than planting them 10 feet apart as shown on the drawing, that they be more closely spaced at 6 foot on center, and better yet, a more solid appearing result with the plants 3 foot on center.
What? We're on each other. Excuse me.
And so as far as site plan reviews goes, those are my concerns. The board needs to look closely at the items I identified and determine whether they need discussion and resolution by the board. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. The city engineer did have some comments, which I'll read. The proposed driveway entrance onto Bay complicates an already confusing intersection and will likely lead to an increase in traffic accidents. That's number 1. Number 2, the actual underground extent of the National Grid underground vaults and facilities near the proposed entrance needs to be verified. 3, the depiction of existing trees to remain, end quote, is not consistent with the proximity of the proposed building to the trees, nor is it consistent with the proposed parking lot construction within the drip line of the trees. And number 4, the sewer department does have an interest in using a portion of this site for mitigation of stormwater, combined sewer flows, and minimization of wastewater treatment plant bypasses to the Hudson River. I'm not sure exactly specifically what that means. The city engineer would have to expand upon that, but those are his comments. So we'll proceed with planning board comments. I'll begin with Mr. Hall.
Mute yourself. So it appears as though a significant amount of engineering work has been provided. George put together, after our last meeting, it looks like a fair amount of documents were put together, obviously rather hastily, because it was only a few days after the meeting that the next submission deadline was due. And to be able to produce six engineering drawings in that short of amount of time is a fair amount of work in and of itself, in my opinion. So is this a work in progress? Sure, this is a work in progress, but I think a lot of effort was put forth bringing this out, and some of the items that have been brought up obviously bear some additional engineering. And George, I hate to throw that back in your lap, but there it is. I think, to answer one of Dan's points, I think that this is a three-sided lot. The way that the property is carved out makes it look as though it's four-sided, but it is three-sided. It's bounded by Bay Street and Glen Street, and then the rest of the property to the north. And it looks, from what I'm seeing and from what I'm looking at, it looks as though they've met the requirements for those side yard or front yard setbacks in the GC1 zone. So, with that, I'm pretty good with what they've provided so far. Obviously, there's some things that are going to have to be responded to, but I trust that George is moving forward with those as well. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Could I just listen to the other comments, Dan, because I wasn't here at the last meeting, and I'll go at the end, if that's okay.
That's fine. Ms. Murray?
Okay. No, I agree with Ethan that there is a lot of work that's been done, and I appreciate that. And clarifying about the fronts, I appreciate that. I think that I share the engineer's concerns, particularly about the ingress and egress onto Bay Street. And hang on, I'm sorry, I turned my notes over. And also about the engineer's concerns about the trees. I think that's a big deal that we need to pay attention to, if we can keep all those trees there. And that's it right now.
Thank you. Ms. Culligan.
My comments are similar. So again, I have an issue with the ingress egress. I do also have concerns about stormwater, obviously, and the snow removal. Also, I would prefer to be able to keep all the trees there.
I might comment on a couple. We just had two similar concerns with two different board members, if you don't mind, Dan.
Sure.
It was, obviously we attempted a sketch plan review, but that wasn't achieved. Although I did talk to you personally and a couple other board members, and I suggested, and actually they had suggested the ingress egress from the Bay Road side, only because it was brought to my attention. Again, I haven't worked in the city of Glens Falls for decades, but I definitely pay attention to the traffic flow. I've been there for 3 years and been a big part of actually directing traffic. So I appreciate your concerns on Bay Road. But there was a curb cut there that provided access to 333 Glen Street for decades prior to them curbing that off for their own personal reasons. That was the reason that we came up with the Bay Road ingress and egress. Now, I do share your concerns with traffic flow in regards to it being opposite from Maple Street or whatever. We would, we could easily propose a right-hand exit only out of our lot. Not something that I would prefer, but we could also have an ingress egress opposite on Glen Street. The parking design allows for that. And we actually prepared for that with these comments. We assumed that there might be a necessary secondary curb cut. But I've also talked to other board members as well. And this is something that we weren't proposing only because we don't want anybody to, use this as a thoroughfare to avoid the traffic control device at Glen and Bay. In regards to the stormwater, so that's my comments on that particular. In regards to stormwater, stormwater concerns have been addressed for this building. And if the city has interest in using it, I mean, again, they probably should have bought it. I guess that's my only take on that. Setbacks, Ethan, you answered that question, and that's it for those couple.
Okay. Let's see. Mr. Accardi.
He looks like he's on mute.
He is. I'll wait. Mr. Accardi. Peter? Any comments? All right, we'll move along. Ms. Andrews.
Hi, I have a couple of concerns, some of which have been addressed already, with more of a, perhaps a different perspective. I was concerned about the sanitation vehicles and emergency vehicles being able to come and go and turn around inside the parking lot when the parking lot is full. There's a discussion in the parking lot code that talks about the ability to turn around in the driveway since there's really only one egress, and I don't see that exactly. And the other thing is there room enough to turn around in the driveway so they don't have to back up onto Bay, which seems to be the specific concern. I know that at my house, the sanitation truck backs up onto the road, and I don't really even know how they'd get in and then get back out and with another car in the lot. So I don't know how that's going to work. The traffic already backs up at the light at the intersection of Bay and Glen, and I'm concerned about the proximity to the light that it may cause gridlock. And as other people have mentioned, concern about the Maple Street entrance. I like the current open space, call it green space, call it city space. But when I'm driving downtown, I like to be able to see the traffic coming on Glen and coming into the light. So I kind of know what kind of an intersection I'm coming into. And I think the building will forestall some of the visibility between Glen and Bay that just allows you to see where traffic is coming to until you get up to the intersection. I see it as a corner lot so that call either one a front, but I think they're both a front yard, a front side. And so each would have a setback of 20 feet. And I don't know with the octagonal shape of the drawing where the edge is, but I don't see how 20 feet fits in there. The best lighting in the building seems to be in the front facing the intersection. And yet that won't be where people will be walking in and out of. What I'm concerned about is people coming and going from the parking lot. The parking lot itself is lit, but the walkway and the standing at the door to open the door makes them vulnerable with safety and security where the light is most needed. There's very little light in the back of the building, and which, because people will be using it, is actually the front of the building. So that those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
You want me do I have a chance to respond to Kim's?
Sure.
Yeah, I spoke today, the fire chief actually spoke to Mr. Vanderzee, and that was a concern that we addressed. Chief Schrammel proposed possibly a secondary ingress from the Glen Street side, just to prevent any, through traffic. I would propose an optional gate of sort that, just like a lockbox on a building, the fire chief would have the only key to. Because Kim, you're definitely not going to be able to turn a fire truck around in this parking lot, so that's a great concern. As far as the garbage goes, we'll address this in any way. Casella has manually emptied my garbages without bringing a truck into the alley at 276 Glen Street since the time I've turned the building over. So they manually walk them out. They don't bring their equipment into the alley because for one, it wouldn't fit, and there's certainly no way they could turn around. In regards to the lighting, we've definitely provided adequate lighting, not only on the front, but also at the rear of the building. We're proposing beautiful, brand new LED lights in the parking lot and attached to the building itself. So lighting, and I agree with you, security is of utmost concern. We're going to have a lockdown building, key code entry. So that's the same way we do the other building. So lighting is definitely important.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald, did you want to add anything?
So my comments at this point initially would be just at the highest level. I think the board seems to get the legal review that it needs to do, but I would just reiterate that the board is reviewing the site plan, and when we get to it, the architectural against the current code that's in place. The questions of whether the property should be taken as a park space for the city is really a decision for the Common Council to make, not the planning board. The requirement of the 2,500 square feet of space that was raised, that is in the code for GC1, and there's not anything in the code that specifically allows the planning board to vary that requirement. So that would be, if a variance is needed, that would have to be granted by the zoning board. I understand Attorney Lapper's comments. We'll certainly take those under advisement and confer with the board later on that. There's also an issue, at least one person made a comment about a full environmental impact statement. My comment at this point would just to the board would be, I would suggest beginning by reviewing the long form part 1 seeker that was submitted, and then depending on how the board reviews that, if they want more information, they could request it. But I think it would be a little premature just to jump to a environmental impact statement without beginning the seeker review.
Okay. All right.
Can I speak?
No,
Go ahead.
it's muted.
Go ahead, Mr. Cardy. Peter?
I want to talk about the setbacks. So the first one is on the corner, and the corner is 15 foot instead of 20 feet. But I like to talk about some S3. I think there's too much light on Glen Street. There were too much light. If you lower the lights, and then you can have lower the lights on Glen Street than they were shining on, on the street. So I think we could lower the lights. And I was wondering if on the north side of a parking lot, can you leave the trees that there are there? Because if you get 20 feet trees, the calls for 20-foot trees. I think L1 trees, no, T1 trees. They were going to block. They were going to block the light and on the church, but the trees that are there, they're low enough. They don't block the light. So if you leave the trees there.
Maybe sailors. Sean?
Does Mr. Riccardi, I'm sure he's aware that our latest site plan shows that we're going to keep all the trees that are there. I mean, that's something that we learned on the last few board meetings, that, you know, there's vested interest in the existing oak trees to remain. So that's something that we plan on, and we'll work our lighting scheme around the trees. Somebody had mentioned a shadow study. Judy, I believe you said that. You know, we're going to definitely make sure that we're not providing any light where it's not necessary, and we're going to make sure that we provide adequate light where safety is a concern. You know, I've already talked to National Grid in regards to the engineer's comments. Sorry. I've talked to National Grid. I've gotten a letter from Kim Weatherwax, who's our local representative, regarding the vaults that the engineer brought up. You know, it's part of the reason why the ingress egress on Bay Road is where it is because we were avoiding the vaults there. But no concern is from National Grid in a letter I've already submitted to John Lapper there. And I've already contacted SHPO regarding all the historic preservation. I've got a letter that say they have no interest in anything on this parcel. Talked to the fire chief. I've dealt with the green space. The setbacks are correct. We've gone through that. Chris Vanderzee and I, you know, we had a modification options, and we went through it. We designed a building, and George and I had to stop what we were doing, you know, confirmed what we did was correct with Chris Vanderzee, and resubmitted. So setbacks are definitely accurate. So.
Mr. Chairman, can I point something out with the lighting? All the lights that we're proposing for the parking lot are dark sky limited and pretty much zero backlighting. So the trees that are going to be along the church will have zero backlighting. And if you look at the lighting diagram we provided, we're not looking at any overflow onto the church property or even onto the sidewalk that we're proposing be put in.
Okay, thank you. So you want to proceed with the seeker?
Mr. Bruno, if I can say something, Ron Green never got to speak.
Good point. You should have spoken before.
My
Go
turn.
ahead.
All right, you got a few things here in the site plan. And what we'd want to see is all the underground utilities, also with the contours, the stormwater plan would have to be approved by the city engineer. Also in the code, it calls in a parking space for 10% of the parking with curbs and plantings in it. That would have to be in the drawing to satisfy the code also. And we want the location of the transformers. Any transformers are going to supply utilities to the building. I know this probably comes in the architectural review, but location of air conditioners, condensing units, how's the condensate going to drain out of 21 apartments, or, things like that. So just what I have for right now. Oh, and as far as the exit and entrance on Bay Street, I know we did it with Stewart's. I don't know, maybe we should have an independent parking study, because this is such a controversial project, to ease those concerns, or, bring them out in the open by somebody that's a professional at doing that. So that would be my suggestion.
That it?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Fitzgerald, do we want to proceed with seeker?
I would suggest that at most, if you wanted to start seeker tonight, that you just review the applicant's responses. But since it seems like the board is looking for more information from the applicant, I wouldn't complete the whole analysis in motion, because then you'd have to do it over again if the project changes.
So we'll hold off on that then.
Yeah, you could discuss it. I would just not make a motion for
No,
final review.
I won't discuss anything if we're not going to act on it.
Dan, I'm kind of looking through it right now. We were provided with the full environmental assessment form previously in the previous applications.
Yeah.
I'm going through all of the application that I've got, and I don't see an updated one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hold on a minute. It's in stack number 3 over here. Just the one I had still said 43 apartment units, and I know that that's different now. Okay, all right. So I've got a corrected one here. Sorry, it was in a different stack of paper.
Okay.
Got it.
Thank you. So the board has a number of outstanding questions that need to be addressed prior to moving forward with any approval, if you will. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
I think that is a consensus. I think obviously Mr. Patton's got some, I think we have some responsibility to Mr. Patton as well. To say, where are we with this project? We've all kind of reviewed what's here, and we've asked for some more information, but I think that, to give him some indication of where we're headed with this, is that, he's going to have a fair amount of outlay of expense here to make that happen.
But will he have to go through the zoning board first for the density variance?
No, I think that's a question for Ed.
And what's your thoughts on that? I FOIL requested 5 different properties in the city, Freedom of Information law, obviously. 5 different properties that have been constructed within the last 5 years. Some that John had brought up, that Judy's team had funded. It seems that on this particular project, because the board doesn't, or maybe some people are not interested in having this building go through, I'm being held under a microscope. One that hasn't been held up on other projects that other people have interest in having built. Be it location. I understand the location isn't ideal in some people's minds. However, that could be debated. This location shouldn't be held under any further additional scrutiny as any of the other projects that you guys have approved unanimously. Nobody even brought up a 2,500 square foot density per unit. Also in GC1 code, it says the word reasonable in relationship to zoning, and in reasonable density, there would be no way to not consider 21 units on 23,000 square feet. When just 3 or 4 years ago, I sat before this very board who right across the street was so ecstatic about me putting 18 apartments on 274 Glen Street with no parking, no green space provided because there wasn't any. And we have 18 units on 8,200 square feet. So call it reasonable. Yeah, we're providing way more than what we did or than what we provided across the road. And there's 5 other projects, and I could probably, if you'd like, I'd pull up another 10 where the density law was not applied. So it's being applied to me, and it's unfair. It should be unlawful. That's it.
I think one of the differences is because they're rehabs instead of new building.
That's not correct. You could not be more incorrect. I apologize, Kim, but I read the code. I've been reading it for many, many nights. And 220-17 GC1 identifies clearly that it's not only new construction, it's also renovation, and it's very, very spelled out. So you are incorrect.
Mr. Fitzgerald, any comment?
So my comment at this time would be that every parcel is different. That while the law is basically unambiguous, that it's 2,500 square feet, whether prior actions by the board created a precedent that the board cannot enforce it in this particular project would be examined on a case-by-case basis, which I would advise you privately on, not in a public meeting that's being recorded.
Why not?
That's my determination to make, and the board may want legal counsel in private because they're entitled to it on an issue that may be litigation.
Sure.
The other thing would be with respect to the building across the street, it is in a different zoning where that requirement was not.
Reasonable, what is the word? Reasonable density.
No, the building across the street is in a different zone. That
Yeah,
doesn't
I
have that
understand.
requirement.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
I'm not going to, in sum, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to advise the board to completely ignore that requirement.
So we're going to just call it a precedent that we're going to set for this project. Is that correct? We're going to set a precedent.
I'm talking to the chairman of the board right now.
Understood.
So what is the pleasure of the board? Do you want to table this pending additional information as requested? I'll ask you one by one. Ms. Andrews.
Yeah, I'd like to see it pending further. I know it's hard to get engineering paperwork done, but I think it's essential. This is a controversial project and there's a lot of details that people have a lot of questions on.
Right, and this is currently, we're just talking about site plan, just for clarification.
Okay.
We're still going to review the architectural aspects. Mr. Accardi, are you there?
Yes. I think he's, I think Chris Patton is justified to have that 2,500 square feet deleted, because other people.
Well, that's for another discussion. I'm asking you now. Do you want to table
have
this
to have
pending?
that, so you shouldn't have to have it.
Shouldn't have to have it, is what he said.
Yeah, I heard him.
Yeah.
What are you in favor of tabling this pending other additional information? I'm not talking specifically about the 2,500 square feet.
Oh, yeah, you have to table it.
Okay.
Not complete.
Ms. Culligan.
I'm in favor of tabling it.
Thank you. Ms. Murray?
Grounds.
Ms. Murray?
I'm in favor of tabling it.
Mr. Green?
I'm in favor of tabling it.
Mr. Hall?
I think that there's more information that's required, yes.
Okay. Mr. Fitzgerald, we okay with that?
Yes, similar to last time, include in your motion that you're keeping the public hearing open.
Okay, we should give Mr. Patton a list of open items, if you will, or additional information required.
Yeah, every single one, like Ethan was starting to say, I'll go at this thing 15 times if I have to. I want to see this project through just like anybody else would. If you want a traffic study done, that's what we're going to do. If you want to see a turnaround for a fire truck, we're going to provide a turnaround. If you want to see additional lighting, that's what we're going to do. I'll be right back at next meeting with all this stuff answered. But I don't think it's fair from Dan Brown to respond at what time today? Maybe like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So I have no chance of even trying to respond to his comments. Why don't we have a sketch plan review? Like
that's what
identified in your,
Mr. Patton,
what's that?
Please, just a minute.
Let's have a sketch plan review.
Sketch plan review occurs in this venue. It's not a separate thing. We don't hold additional meetings to conduct sketch plan reviews.
Well, I don't think that's right, but
what's that?
Not in the zoning laws. It doesn't say it. It says you're encouraged to do one. It's not only a sketch plan review, but also a workshop. Have you read it?
We don't do workshops for applicants.
Sure.
So that's the board's purview. That's our call.
Fair enough.
Anyway, I'm not going to get into an argument here. So anybody want to make a motion regarding the site plan review? No.
Make a motion that we table the site plan review pending
Additional
information, yeah.
Have a second?
A second.
Second.
Any other discussion? There being none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, yes.
Any opposed? So moved. Let's move on. What's that?
Chairman, are we going to get a list from the board that combines everything?
Yes, we'll get you a list.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So the last item, architectural review 21-007, Chris Patton, contract less E of 333 Glen Associates LLC, owner of tax map number 302.20-23-4, commonly known as 333 Glen Street, is seeking approval for the construction of a residential apartment building at this location. Pursuant to City Code, Chapter 220, Section 220-17D. This application requires planning board review and approval. That said, Mr. Lapper, Mr. Patton, do you have anything to add regarding architectural review before we proceed?
I think we really covered it all together. So we're just interested in seeing what your list of items that you'd like us to explore in more detail.
Regarding site plan?
Oh, no, regarding architecture, the
Okay.
same thing, because we discussed a lot about the building already.
Are there any members of the public that care to comment on the architectural review aspects of this application?
No one has
Ms.
requested.
Colagero?
Thank you, Mr. Bruno, again, and the members for letting me speak. Just to add some of the things that I didn't have time to speak about before that are related to design. The design as presented, I think, distracts significantly from the historic buildings in the area. And I'm repeating myself here because I've said this before, but the City of Glens Falls does not have a historic review commission, but the State Office of Historic Preservation is available to assist a city like Glens Falls with a review of a property that's being proposed within a historic district. They can assist with both design, materials, placement, these types of things. And I would encourage that the City of Glens Falls Planning Board either bring SHPO into this process to aid and assist you, or some other architectural historian that specializes in this area, or an architect that specializes in this area to help. The design does not need to what's been there before or exact to the buildings that are nearby, but it does need to complement it. The Gothic design of the Church of the Messiah is most significant, but there are other properties, including 21 Bay and Smith Flats and other properties in the library itself that need to be taken into consideration. In fact, I would point to the library as a good example of a property that had an addition put onto it that actually favorably complements and does not detract from the appearance of the original building. And I think that that's one of the things that you want to look at here. And while it does not relate to historic review or architectural review, I do want to just step back to what the actual unit size would be. And there's been several comments since I spoke and raised that issue about the number of dwelling units. And if the planning board has not followed that part of the code in the past, I don't see how, if it being raised here as a significant issue, prevents you from considering that piece of the code. It's, you know, it basically limits the size to 9.5 units. And so in review of the design of the building, I think it should be 9.5 units or 9 units and not 21. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pate, do we have anyone else?
I have no one in queue. I don't see any other hands. I think we're good.
Thank you. We will proceed with Mr. Brown, our architectural consultant, regarding architectural review.
Yes, and I guess my overall question again is the application materials for architectural review, whether they're complete or adequate or incomplete and inadequate. Reviewing the requirements for the submission, the drawings are, of the building elevations are supposed to show and label siding, trim, windows, doors, dimension the heights, show mechanical, electrical equipment on exterior walls, including AC, heating, ventilation, etc., special equipment, through wall items, and especially noticeable on the newer projects is, in this case, somewhere on the exterior of the building, there would be apparently 21 gas meters. Now, where do they occur? And how are they exposed to the public? So the two drawings that were submitted, computer generated images, 3 of which are 3D, are quite different from the applicant's previous submission, which were the conventional 2-dimensional drawings that showed what the building looked like, but at that time lacked the required dimensions and labels and other details. So at this point, however, the computer generated images, for instance, when I go to look for the columns on the building, from one view, they're flat with the wall, and the computer shows them as a painted, if you will, stripe on the building. So we need more detail about that. I don't think that's the applicant's intent, but the trouble is that's what the computer understands. So I think we've got to get back to the conventional convention of the industry, building elevation type of drawing that can show all of that information. And if other details would explain it better, they can also be provided at that time. So based on the 2 sheets of drawings that were submitted, I don't think the board can proceed at all in using that material.
That it?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I had no comments from the city engineer regarding the architectural aspect of this application. So that said, we'll begin with planning board comments. Start with Ms. Andrews.
I had a few concerns. Again, they're just missing. There's information that we need, proposed stairways, ramps, windows, the exterior construction, and the measurements of the interior units. And there was one thing that I thought was an interesting thing, and I don't know why it says that. Clearing and disposal of snow would be for the sidewalks only and not the parking lot. I don't understand why that would be, what do you do with the parking lot? Just let it be. I mean, I'm not even sure why that was in architectural review, but if that's in there, then what is the answer for the parking lot? And I guess that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Accardi, Peter?
Yeah, I think there's inconsistency in the drawings. You got to be more specific. But the other thing, people were wanting think something architecturally similar to the insurance company, but Mr. Charles Gerald says not. So I think maybe the applicant should do what he wants to do instead of doing that imitation of the insurance company. That's my comment.
Thank you. Ms. Colligan.
So I don't think that this building design fits with the area at all. I don't think that it looks like there are 3 different materials, and I don't think they blend well. The awning doesn't fit at all. And I just want to add, I like the idea of working with an architect who is experienced in historical design. That's it.
Sure, thank you. Good comments. Ms. Murray?
Yep, no, I would agree that maybe using somebody from SHPO or using somebody to advise a little bit on a historical recommendation regarding, the materials and the proportions and design, just in order to complement some of the other beautiful architecture in the city might be. Yeah, I think we need some additional information. Like, are those columns in the front? And what are they made out of? There's just a couple questions I had about the materials and whatnot that I would like to see.
Yeah, they are columns in the middle. They're going to be hand constructed, fluted columns, and I was going to even propose like a backlighting so we could, add to the downtown lit buildings and the vibe that currently Peter Hoffman does all over the place. You guys seem to like his style, so I mean that's what I was going to try to propose.
And it's on 3 sides. Is it on the back? They're not on the back though, are they?
No, it's on 3 sides. Yep.
Okay. And what's the material? So you have the brick in the middle.
Yep.
You have stone on the bottom. Is it a different material on the top?
It's a stone. It's a stone. We can either do an EFIS product. Really, I was looking at the pictures from the historic building there that once stood, and that's exactly what I tried to duplicate. There's some EFIS style, cornices up in the top and with corbels that kind of match the old building, and then definitely a block and solid masonry finish on level 1, and then the brick, that was there on the old building as well.
So it's the same material on the top and the bottom. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, that's the way I had it shown. Yes, we could, because I don't want to go crazy and show 4 or 5 different materials. I do have that same concrete style, marble look is what the old building kind of looked like. So that's what I was trying to duplicate.
And then all your utilities are going to be up on the roof?
Yeah. So, in relation.
And that's like a parapet at the top?
Yeah,
so
it's a 6-foot parapet wall on the top of that building that we're going to have every single one of our condensers on the roof, as many penetrations as we can get to go through the roof. So we're not ruining the aesthetics of the building. Certainly somebody could ask for a full schematic. That's easy for anyone to say if they're not in this construction field, but just from being around construction at all, things change in the field. So we would do the best we can to try to, combine different penetrations and, put blocks on so they're decorative and they look nice. You talked about the gas meters. It's a requirement by National Grid. What would you propose, Mr. Architect? I don't understand. What would you propose?
Well, they're simply required. Show us where you want to put them. That's all.
It's going to be field verified by National Grid, right? So National Grid's going to come out. We're going to do a full walkthrough, like Kim Weatherwax and I've already done 3 times, and then she's going to determine the best location that would not interfere with any of our stormwater or any of those other things that we're going to propose.
Well, my presumption is that you have to install the meters on the side of the building.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a code required by National Grid. Do you want me to deviate from that?
I'm not saying you don't do it. I'm saying, where is it going to happen? You can discuss with the utility company and say, I want to put them here nearest the service entrance or wherever. But the question to the board is, what's the decision? Where do you want to put them? And how does it influence your design?
Sure.
We don't want to tell you where to put anything. We know that they're required.
Okay. So I guess to wrap that up, if we have to put grid meters in there, I don't want to have an eyesore downtown. It seems like a lot of people here just think I'm trying to, build some ugly building. I'm designing something around what you guys have all proposed. Let's bring back some of the historic, let's bring back the nostalgia of the old building. Let's bring back the history. A couple comments here, like, this doesn't fit in. How could I fit in any greater than building what was once there? SHPO been brought up a bunch of times. SHPO, the historic preservation has no interest in this project whatsoever. I've already submitted a letter on that behalf. The time that the SHPO organization should have got involved is when a planning board approved the deconstruction or the raising of the once beautiful building that stood here in 1976. They took down a gorgeous building that added to the city I'm trying to bring it back, and people are telling me that I don't conform, I don't fit in, and you know, it's kind of convoluting requests here. I didn't design this building. I designed it, but this was not my first go at it. I wanted a brand new Patio style building. I proposed for you a $6 million high rise. I got laughed out of the office here. I mean, this is not what I wanted. I wanted to change the zone. We know that. You guys pushed me away. I wanted 43 units. You wanted to push me away from the church. So now here I am with all of your comments, and yet every time I come back, I get a new array of comments. So here we are.
We're going to continue here.
Sure.
Ms. Murray, was that
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
all for you? Mr. Green?
I agree if this project goes forward and it is in the code that we can get outside help. So I agree that we should either get an architect that is an expertise in the architecture there. And this building does not represent what was there. I don't know if you've seen pictures of it or not, but this is not what was there with the columns, the old columns and everything. And also, I think we shouldn't do anything else until we get the 255 square foot thing resolved, so one way or the other, because it's just wasting everybody's time.
I agree.
Mr. Hall?
I agree. I agree with Ron. I mean, we've asked for multiple things, and it seems as though Chris has responded each time to what we've talked about. But I think that he needs some final direction on that before we get too carried away here.
Very good. Then, that being said, we would table this along with the site plan regarding, just to close out, regarding gas meters and electric, I mean, we put them on buildings a lot of places before, and you can screen them with vegetate with shrubs or what have you. So I don't know if that's a big concern. Wherever they go in the building, you could provide some arborvitae or something out from the meters, so you can still get in there, read them, do what you have to do, but they'd be screened. So anyway, I just want to throw that in. Somebody want to fashion a motion regarding tabling this?
I would make a motion to table architectural review, and I'm searching around for it. 21007 for Chris Patton, 333 Glen Street. Based on the information as we discussed here and the information in Dan Brown's letter, agenda item number 6, and the things in the applicant's checklist that are missing from the renderings that were provided for this package.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Just a question. If you are going to impose the 2,500 square foot density on my building, when will I find that out so I can reapply with a 9-unit building?
Good question.
I'd like to be able to discuss that with Chris and with Ed. So let's go forward and we'll get back on that.
Very good. I agree. I think that's a good approach. Thank you, Mr. Lapper. Okay, no other discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Yes.
So moved. Megan, question for you. You have the notes here. How did you put a list together based on what's been said here regarding items we've asked of the applicant, Mr. Patton?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Appreciate that. Within a day or so?
Yeah, I should be able to get together in a couple of days, day or two.
Okay, we'll get that together and get it to Mr. Patton or Mr. Lapper or both.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, John.
I have
All
a
right,
question before we break up, if I could. The
yes.
historic district, is that defined anywhere? Is that,
Yeah.
is there a vision for that? Is there a criteria? I know there's no code around it particularly, but
Right.
when they describe it, is there something about it?
There's the Three Squares Historic District, and I go out on a limb. Maybe Mr. Brown knows more than I do, but that is delineated or defined, I believe.
It's clearly defined by the state, and the corners of the historic district have specific geographic coordinates, north and south, if you will, like latitude and longitude. So the corners of the historic site are legally defined by those measurements.
Maybe you could help Ms. Andrews locate them or locate that.
I guess I
source.
was looking for if they had any instruction on the kind of building or the type of buildings that they were looking at, or because this is a 1950s or 1940s structure, which is
Sure.
quite different than the 1860 and 1870 stuff that's through town.
Right.
Kim, I think that I might have a hard copy. I've got to look in my hard copy files of the actual creation of that district. And if I do, I'll scan that and send it over to you. It defines where the district is.
I appreciate it.
Can you send that out to all of us, please?
Yep, I can do that.
Thank you.
If I don't have it, then Bob Curtis or someone else at the city would have it.
Yeah, Bob Curtis or who was the historian? Wainwright. He's a good resource. And along those lines, we should field a historic architect, an architect who's versed in historic buildings. Who would be best to determine that? You, Ethan, Mr. Brown?
I think it's Mr. Brown. He seems to have a better feel for that than I do. Okay. I don't deal in historic structure.
Can you do that, Mr. Brown?
Yes, I can. I've dealt with some historic structures, mostly in situations where state grants are awarded to local and regional governments, and act as an architect to undertake those grants.
Um,
but we're looking for an independent, correct?
Yeah.
And I think the thing we have to keep in mind here is that this is a privately funded project, and it's not subject to a lot of those requirements that a publicly funded project would be.
No. What we're looking for is some advice, Ethan.
I know, I get it. Yeah.
From a
I get where you're coming from.
architect that is versed in, historic buildings, et cetera. That's all. We're not imposing necessarily anything on the applicant, but it is good. And I think from what I'm hearing from the board, they would like some advice.
Sure.
Why not?
Can
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Why not start with some city architects that we already have within the city who have been around and still practicing?
Well, that's fine. I'm not going to make that determination. That's why I'm asking if Mr. Brown or someone else.
It's really.
Mr. Bruno?
Good idea.
Yes. Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
If I may?
Yeah.
As a former state official, I know that the State Office of Historic Preservation has an architect who's assigned to this area. That may not be the appropriate person, but they would be able to provide you with names of people, both local and regional, that you could choose from. They could give you a list.
That's fine.
Is that through the list in the office in Waterford?
Yes, I can send you a contact name. And
Yeah, that's SHPO.
Yes, it's SHPO. It's part of the New York State Office of Parks and Recreation.
Right.
Yeah, I've had some business with them in the past. Yeah.
Right, and the department name is State Office of Historic Preservation. Their main office is in Waterford.
If you want to, if you want to get me a contact or two or what have you,
I will.
I'll confer with Bob Curtis or somebody about getting them on board.
They provide the service to governments, to local
Oh,
governments.
okay, so there's no
If
check.
you're dealing
But-
with the state government advising the local government, it's something that they do.
So there's no fee involved then?
Correct. There should be no fee.
Why don't you, you can contact me, Ms. Caligero, and we can get in touch with them or what have you,
Be happy
since
to.
you seem to know them. Is that okay?
That'd be fine. I'm happy to do that.
All right. What else? Mr. Pape, do we have any other comments, YouTube or otherwise, or?
There are no comments on YouTube. There was no one in the queue who wishes to speak. We are down somewhat now in terms of viewership, so it's winding down.
Okay, thank you very much. I just got one last thing. Mr. Fitzgerald and I have been working, and we're meeting again tomorrow with regard to the proposed updates / modifications / additions to City Code, Chapter 220. I mean, we've only been dragging that out about 10 years, but we are working on it. And again, we're getting together tomorrow to, what we're trying to do is formalize, if you will, catalog, whatever you want to call it, some of the changes or updates, and then we'll submit that. You'll all see them, and we'll submit that to the Common Council for consideration. Anyone have anything else? If not, I thank everyone, board members, public, etc. And have a good evening. Mr. Pape, I'll be talking to you. Thank you.
Dan, do we know, are these meetings going to go back to in-person meetings anytime soon?
It's a good question. I'm talking to the mayor tomorrow regarding that. And
I just find this to be extremely cumbersome.
It is. And I see no reason at this point why we couldn't. Well, my personal opinion is we could have done this quite a while ago, but that's just my opinion.
I agree.
And do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes, we do.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Hall, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.